The Haryana government's decision to transfer its top land officer probing land deals of Sonia Gandhi's son-in-law Robert Vadra raises various questions. First and foremost, is the Congress government in Haryana trying to scuttle the probe into Robert Vadra's land dealings?
The minimum tenure is 2 years in a post. And I don't see a reason why the government of the day cannot obey the law or the rule established by itself.
तबादला जो है वो सरकार का कार्य है, तबादला को पनिशमेंट नहीं होती। नंबर 2 जो उसने बात कही है, मैंने चीफ सेक्रेटरी को कहा है, चीफ सेक्रेटरी को वो उसकी जांच वो तो दिखाएंगे। अगर किसी जहाँ तक हरियाणा सरकार का सवाल है, किसी को हमने अनड्यू फेवर नहीं दिया है, ट्रांसपेरेंट सिस्टम है सारा।
One honest officer with integrity has decided to take suo motu action. The government acted against him and transferred him, and that too delivered the transfer order at 10 p.m. in the night. This is nothing but an emergency mindset.
Ashok Khemka, the Director General of Land Consolidation and Land Records, has been transferred. Coincidentally, the transfer comes shortly after he began a probe into Robert Vadra's dealing with realty giant DLF. Khemka says he is being targeted, an allegation that the Haryana government has obviously outright rejected. A tailor-made situation for the opposition to train its guns on Bhupinder Singh Hooda. Literally hounded out, Ashok Khemka shot a missive to the State Chief Secretary demanding answers. In the letter, he asked why he has been shunted out within 3 months of being given his current assignment. He says its attempt to punish him. The panchayats, he points out, lost huge tracts of land by deliberate undervaluation, and that it is unfair to punish him for exposing scams and corrupt acts. Khemka insists that it's a witch hunt triggered by his bold decisions against Robert Vadra. Here is how the case panned out. On the 12th of February in 2008, Vadra Skylight bought 3.53 acres in Manesar, Shikohpur for 7.5 crore rupees. On the 28th of February that year, Skylight issued the license to develop 2.7 acres into a housing colony. Around June-October that year, Skylight made an advance payment of 50 crore rupees to DLF towards the sale of land. Intriguingly, in Jan last year, Skylight's license to develop land was renewed despite 80% of the sale price paid being by DLF. And finally, on the 18th of September this year, Skylight sold this land to DLF, although consolidation proceedings were still underway. So the question is, who favored Robert Vadra and why? The Chief of Town Planning Department of Haryana stands in the dock, mysteriously renewing land development license to Vadra's firm and allowing Vadra's firm to sell land against the rules. So did Robert Vadra inform the land authorities about his bid to sell land to DLF? If authorities were informed, then why was the license reissued? The other person who needs to answer is the Assistant Consolidation Officer of Gurgaon, the man who allowed mutation of land despite not being the right authority and allegedly acted way beyond his jurisdiction only to favor Skylight, Robert Vadra's company. The questions for Assistant Consolidation: why did he go out of his way to mutate land for Vadra's firm? Was the ESO under pressure to allow this mutation against the rules?
अशोक खेमका हरियाणा के एक बहुत ही ईमानदार IAS अफसर हैं। उनका पिछले 20 साल में 40 बार ट्रांसफर कर दिया गया है। उन्होंने रॉबर्ट वाद्रा जी की सारी जमीनों के इंक्वायरी के ऑर्डर दिए थे। वो हरियाणा के इंस्पेक्टर जनरल रजिस्ट्रेशन है लैंड रिकॉर्ड्स। उन्होंने सारी रॉबर्ट वाद्रा जी की जमीनों के ऑर्डर दिए थे कि इनकी इंक्वायरी की जाए, क्योंकि इस पे काफी भ्रष्टाचार के मामले आ रहे हैं। और उनके इंक्वायरी कर देते के ऑर्डर देते ही उनको ट्रांसफर कर दिया गया। उनकी नजर में एक डील आई जो DLF और रॉबर्ट वाद्रा जी के बीच में हुई थी, जो गैर कानूनी थी। उन्होंने उस डील को कैंसिल करने के ऑर्डर दिए, और जिस दिन उन्होंने कैंसिल करने के ऑर्डर दिए और सारी जमीनों के इंक्वायरी के ऑर्डर दिए, अगले दिन उनको ट्रांसफर कर दिया गया। मुख्यमंत्री जी से जानना चाहता हूं कि क्या हरियाणा के अंदर आईएएस अफसरों की ट्रांसफर को लेकर कोई पॉलिसी है कि नहीं है?
हरियाणा प्रदेश में प्रशासन ठप हो चुका है। लुटेरों का एक गिरोह है जो प्रदेश को लूट के खा रहा है। इनके पास सिवाय ट्रांसफर के और कोई पावर नहीं रही है। अधिकारी इनकी बात को मानते नहीं है, इसलिए वो सजा देने के तौर पर उनको ट्रांसफर करते हैं। ये एक अशोक खेमका का नहीं है, ये बहादुरी से चूंकि उभर के आ गया इसलिए इसका चर्चा है। हरियाणा प्रदेश में इस प्रकार के अच्छे काम करने वाले बहुत से अधिकारियों के निरंतर ट्रांसफर ये सरकार करती जा रही है।
मैं समझता हूँ इसमें कुछ भी इसको राजनीतिक रंग से नहीं देखना चाहिए, क्योंकि ऑफिसर्स के हर राज्यों में ट्रांसफर होते रहते हैं और उसी के अंतर्गत ट्रांसफर होता है।
This case is not unique. It is actually a rule. We must identify the delinquent bureaucrat who facilitates this wrong decision of transfer and order. Remember, ministers are not signing these transfer orders. These orders of postings and transfers are signed by the senior most, by the bureaucrat, by the secretary of the department, or by the chief secretary. They're not signed by the ministers.
Now let's show you how Ashok Khemka was shunted out within 2 days, coincidentally, after he ordered a probe into the DLF Vadra deal. In a letter dated 12th of October 2012, Khemka writes, and I quote, certain allegations have been made regarding undervaluation of land deals of Robert Vadra and his company's undervaluation of property registered in the registering offices of the state leads to loss of revenues to the state government. Khemka further writes that in view of the questions raised and to clear the fair name of registering officers in Haryana, I, Ashok Khemka, IAS, Inspector General of Registrations, Haryana, consider it fit and appropriate to order inspection of all documents since 2005. In case of undervaluation, the matter shall be referred to the collector. The report must reach this office by the 25th of October 2012, unquote. As a parting shot, following his abrupt transfer, Khemka ordered cancellation of land mutation in favor of DLF on the grounds that the Assistant Consolidation Officer who had sanctioned the mutation was not competent to do so. What's worse is that this Haryana IAS officer who dared to take on the system is now fearing for his life. Khemka, who was transferred within days of his initiating a probe into the dealings of Robert Vadra's company, is now facing death threats. His friend says that Khemka is an upright officer and is being targeted for standing up to those in power. Shunted out from his post, Khemka has now sought security. His close friend and lawyer Anupam Gupta says he has been receiving death threats.
I know Mr. Ashok Khemka as one of the most outstanding and one of the most honest officers in the state of Haryana. He has received death threats on phone, the very petty manner of ringing the front door bell and then running off, trying to demoralize a man, break his spirit and resolve. All that I can say, these are very petty efforts.
Joining us now from Pune is former IAS officer Arun Bhatia. Also in the studio with us is my colleague Gaurav Sawant. Mr. Bhatia, does this story sound familiar? Because the Haryana Chief Minister would have us believe that it is not a political decision, the transfer is not a punishment of any sort. As someone who's been on the inside, tell us, is it really a purely administrative matter? This is not a punishment posting for Mr. Khemka?
This is sheer nonsense, ma'am. Every time a transfer is made to cover up corruption, these are the standard arguments given. It's given that the transfer is made on administrative grounds. It's not a political decision. All nonsense. It is a political decision. It is not the Chief Secretary. Somebody said that the Chief Secretary and the Departmental Secretary signed the transfer orders. No. It goes to the Chief Minister. And even if in Haryana the system is different and it doesn't go to the Chief Minister, believe me, the Chief Minister's PA runs the show on the telephone.
And Gaurav, it's amazing that the politicians would even try and pass off that argument, considering the timing of this decision, 2 days within him ordering an inquiry into the dealings of DLF and Mr. Vadra's firms, and suddenly finds himself shunted out.
That's the big question, the timing of the transfer. He's been here for only 3 months. In 3 months, he's transferred out. Why? Because there are several land scams that he's exposed. He's talked about the Robert Vadra case, but speaking to headlines today, he said he wasn't targeting Robert Vadra, he wasn't targeting DLF. His aim was to ensure that the state of Haryana does not lose revenue, the panchayats do not lose their land. And I have with me 2 letters. One the letter where he's ordered an inquiry, Ashok Khemka's letter, where he's very categorically saying, and I want our viewers to see this letter. Here is an upright IAS officer who's just doing his job, and he's saying, this is an inquiry regarding alleged undervaluation of some properties registered by Shri Robert Vadra or his companies as vendor or vendee. And he's listing out how this is, for 7.5 crore mutation, he's got this property, and is this undervaluation of property registered in the registering office of the state leading to loss of revenue to the state? And that is why he's asking for an inquiry into this matter. That is point one, Padmaja. The second point is where he's writing to his chief secretary, where he's saying it is grossly unfair to punish me for being upright and exposing scams and corrupt acts instead of taking action against the guilty. There's another very important point that he's making in this letter, where he's saying it seems that there is a deliberate malafide to punish me due to some vested elements, and this is extremely critical at this stage, Padmaja. Some vested elements in the political bureaucratic hierarchy affected by the exposure of the scam.
And Arun Bhatia, someone on the inside, haven't you seen this at work? Because by transferring Ashok Khemka, here is a message that has been sent out to the other bureaucrats as well. Stay within your bounds. Don't touch people who are powerful, or you will have to face the consequences, because it is this precise politico-bureaucrat nexus which is at play.
Yeah, that is the message that is being passed. It's also a fact that the replacement will be a very pliant, subservient, corrupt official. The question here is that the people who have signed this horrible transfer order, the chief secretary, the chief minister, they must be made accountable. Because if something comes out of this inquiry and there is actually undervaluation, then these people are guilty of criminal conspiracy to prevent an investigation into disproportionate assets and undervaluation of property. It is the job of the registrar. It is the registration process is all about this, that you don't undervalue your property. In a country where there's so much black money and benami wealth, all that black money is parked into land. So you show 1 crore cost of land, you actually paid 5 crore. So this gentleman actually took on big enemies. Khemka took on big enemies. He had a lot of courage. And he refused to sanction that mutation and ordered an inquiry into this guy Vadra's land dealings. Excellent job. In fact, he should be protected. Citizens should go to court and get this transfer order cancelled, and this chief secretary has to be given a show cause notice. Somebody should take it to court. The chief minister and chief secretary should be made accountable.
But Arun Bhatia, that is the precise problem. Who is going to hold these people accountable? Because here you're talking about the chief minister and the chief secretary, and what's happening here seems to be one is protecting the other, and both are working together to protect the powerful. Who's going to hold them accountable?
Yes. So it's, ma'am, it's citizens like us that have to go to the court, and the court will issue directions. This is the only way to do it. I mean, sitting in Jantar Mantar and raising slogans won't help. The media is doing a great job. The matter has been exposed. Now it's for us to take a PIL to the court.
And in fact,
and have this transfer order set aside. Sorry, ma'am. It has happened before. Transfer orders, malified transfer orders have been set aside by courts. It happened in my case actually. The Pune citizens went to court. So it does happen, and we should go for it.
In fact, Gaurav, what's particularly worrying is that there is this IAS officer who's decided to speak out, and it's not just limited to him being transferred from one post or one place to the other. Now it's come down to a threat to his life.
Yes, he's received a threat to his life. In his letter to the chief secretary, he's also mentioned this as a fact. He says, I am threatened that I would be subject to transfer every month. This is harassment. Why is this happening? So as to humiliate me and demoralize me. There is a big scam that this officer is alleging, as Mr. Bhatia was also pointing out, how property price went up from 7.5 crore. 7.5 crore is what Mr. Robert Vadra is said to have paid. It went up to 58 crores in just 65 days. So that is what he wants an investigation into. Was this property undervalued? Was stamp duty not paid? Was stamp duty not paid effectively? He's alleging a malafide where he's issued an order cancelling the mutation of this 3.5 acres of land, where there is alleged undervaluation of some property, where he's also saying that stamp duty, was there evasion of stamp duty in this case, and that also needs to be investigated. The big question is, will it be investigated?
And the big irony over here, Gaurav, is that the government was so swift off the blocks in taking action against Khemka, but the other officer, his subordinate, who went beyond his, in fact, what was his jurisdiction and allowed this mutation of land, he's still sitting pretty, no action there.
Indeed, because Khemka in this letter, this Haryana government, this letter that Khemka has written very categorically says the mutation of number 4513 sanctioned on 29/2012 by the Assistant Consolidation Officer was also without jurisdiction. A letter was signed to favor somebody without jurisdiction, since he is not a revenue officer under the Punjab Land Revenue Act. So clearly, as per law, and we've been speaking to legal experts, this was illegal. It should not have been done, yet it was done, and as you rightly pointed out, no action was taken against that officer, but Khemka has been ousted.
Arun Bhatia, we're talking about an officer who's still in government service. He's had the courage to take this action. He's had the courage afterwards to speak out against what was done to him. How difficult is it going to be for him to remain in government service? How do you see this panning out?
You know, ma'am, this is a very good question, because it is really terrible. You get bad postings. The politicians have now taken over annual confidential reports. It's no longer the last signatory is not the immediate boss. It's a politician. Departmental inquiries, punishments, all the files go to the politicians. This dividing line between the iron or the steel frame, the bureaucracy and the politician, you know, the bureaucratic, the professional executive and the political executive, this dividing line which acted as a check and balance system no longer exists. It's autocratic, despotic power totally in the hands of the political executives. So now if one has to work under them, A, you're constantly harassed, petty matters, inquiries are ordered against you, you're given unimportant posts, and worst of all, your comrades, your colleagues, they ostracize you. Because they're all worried that if they get too friendly, you will be noticed. It's a horrible existence, and I give full marks to this officer for tolerating this for 20 years. His family suffers, he suffers, his children see their father grow up in service as a man who's hounded, people making fun of him and saying, "Arey, this guy is crazy, he just talks about corruption, apne aap ko kya samajhta hai?" and all the rest of it. Because you are in the middle of a system that is steeped in corruption, entrenched in corruption for many years. So it's a very lonely battle. The great change that has taken place now is the electronic media. You know, people like Khemka can come to you, and now the whole nation knows what this lousy chief secretary and the lousy chief minister have done to this officer. You know, they are answerable. They've been shamed. It's not enough, but things will go further. So that's a big change. But still, for Khemka, it's not going to be a pleasant journey.
Absolutely. In fact, yes, the media is with him. We are going to keep following the story. But the fact remains, Mr. Bhatia, that it is going to affect his career. It already has, hasn't it? Because after 2 decades in service, he's been sent to a posting where someone almost 14 years his junior was holding that post.
Yeah, quite true. You know, I forgot to mention, but when you take on the system, yes, then you've got to forget about your career. I mean, people like him, they will not be promoted to the highest post apart from not getting good jobs. So it's difficult to throw you out of service, but you can just hang on there. And you get your happiness from other sources, from friends, people who admire you, from the media, from the people you save from corruption, from the good things you do. You get your satisfaction from that, but your career will be in ruins, and you have to be prepared for that. And ultimately one says, okay, let's not be so career conscious. What is a promotion? What is an increment? What is after all a good annual confidential report written by your boss who himself is corrupt, countersigned by a minister who himself is corrupt? So you forget about the service part and you get your happiness from other sources.
Well, the story of this IAS officer will not go unnoticed, but it's also important, the story that he has brought out, the story of corruption. And Gaurav, I would like you to dwell in more detail on that, the fact that how this land was transferred in a jiffy. For people like you and I, it would take close to what, 6 to 8 months to get transfer of land. Yes. But when your last name is Vadra, apparently it takes only a few hours.
Well, when you happen to be the son-in-law of the Congress party president, are rules bent for you, and how? That is something that Bhupinder Singh Hooda government needs to answer. Bhupinder Singh Hooda he very casually said that it's an administrative matter, there is no big deal, everything is transparent. But is everything transparent? Because the question that is now being asked, now several Congress leaders have come forward and said it's a private deal between DLF and Robert Vadra. But is it? Was there collusion on the part of the Congress party, the chief minister, several other Congress leaders in the state? They need to answer this, and bureaucrats, where Khemka is alleging a malafide, where Khemka is alleging that there is a political bureaucratic nexus that is affected, and that is why he is being transferred, and it is very demoralizing for an honest and upright officer. There is a threat to his life. People are threatening to kill him or harm his interest, and the chief minister just says no, there is nothing. In case Khemka is misrepresenting facts, we will take uchit karwai against him. This is in a way a veiled threat to Khemka, that either you toe our line, you fall in line, or there will be uchit karwai against you, appropriate action against you. And that is something which is extremely demoralizing for any bureaucrat or anyone who may want to be a whistleblower.
Absolutely. In fact, I would like your thoughts on that, Mr. Bhatia, because what the Chief Minister said today, despite all the outrage, despite the story hitting the headlines, even then he almost seemed to be issuing this veiled threat to Ashok Khemka, saying that if you have misrepresented facts, don't think that you will go unpunished. We will take action against you. Never mind the corrupt officials. We'll think about them later, but you we'll deal with first.
Two things, ma'am. One is, there's no such thing as a private transaction. When the son-in-law of the most powerful woman in the country suddenly rises from rags to riches overnight, it is a matter of investigation. Where does the money come from? Because corruption means taking money out of the public exchequer and putting it in people's pockets instead of putting it in roads and dams. So that is the first point. Second, if the chief minister has written this to Khemka, that you will be handled, you will be fixed, we'll do this, I think it is criminal intimidation. It's a very simple, unadulterated charge of criminal intimidation. If the CBI doesn't take note of this, Khemka or any of his friends, people like us, can take this to the court and prosecute this chief minister. This corrupt man who threatens honest people, this coward, needs to be taken and put behind bars if he's made that sort of a threat to Khemka.
Tell me honestly, Arun Bhatia, where do you see this case against Robert Vadra, this case of the dealings between Robert Vadra's company and DLF going? Because here you see the Chief Minister who's intent on trying to cover up any sort of wrongdoing, a bureaucracy who's been given a clear message, don't meddle with this affair or you will be dealt with. What will happen to this case?
Ma'am, now there's been a sea change. It won't be brushed under the carpet. It may happen today, it may happen tomorrow, it may happen the day after, but this issue will be decided in court. Because it's based on fact. You know, land which costs 10 crores and there's a transaction that shows only 5 crores, there's something wrong. And if he has disproportionate assets, disproportionate to the known sources of income, he is answerable. He can't get out of it. Many of our politicians and bureaucrats are vulnerable here. The point is that the investigative machinery, the police machinery doesn't do this type of investigation. They just pick 1 out of 100 cases for political reasons and do this asset verification.